When 007 First Light was announced, everyone agreed IO Interactive landing the Bond license was a great idea. Try and find people who said otherwise. Even my response was positive upon hearing the news before I gave it any thought. And sure, it tracks on paper. IO Interactive made Hitman, a game about a bald guy in a suit who quietly murders people in luxuriant locations. Slap on a wig and an Aston Martin and you've got James Bond. Except that's the problem. When a studio is hired because their existing game already looks like the license they're bolting onto it, you know exactly what you're getting. Hitman. But he's got a hairline now. The last James Bond game anyone actually remembers came from Rare. Before their turn at Bond, they made Donkey Kong Country, a side-scrolling platform with a theme song that sounds like a 90s house party. Then they took a controller shaped like an outhouse doorknob and somehow built an FPS so good it rewired the genre for consoles. GoldenEye didn't look or feel like James Bond. But it worked anyway. You can get exactly what you imagine by hiring the most obvious developer to fit the bill, but you won't get many surprises from the result, and a lack of genuine surprise is one of the things killing this industry. Reboots and origin stories are the easiest tell in the industry. The exact moment a publisher panics by the license being unable to reach a younger audience, as if the younger audience is what fuels sales of single-player games nowadays, set at a very new and imagined beginning so you can introduce a series of people who either never heard or cared about it and shave off all the bits you think won't gel culturally anymore. Same tuxedo, same Aston Martin, just with a noticeably softer attitude toward international politics, women, and violence. And somehow, in the process of modernizing him, they scrubbed out the one thing that actually made the character interesting: the chauvinism. Not because it's a great look, but because Bond being an unrepentant relic of the past even when set in modern times is the joke. A dinosaur in a nice suit while everyone around him rolls their eyes and puts up with it because he does the work he's given. Take that away and you don't get a better Bond. You get a passport bro with a government paycheck. Honestly, at this point, skip the spy stuff entirely. James Bond, international podcaster, 3 martinis deep and talking over other people about geopolitics he doesn't understand. It's so ubiquitous at this point that a helicopter crash is essentially the main character's origin story. Without it, nothing gets started. James survives this even though I refused the button prompt for well over 5 minutes. Shareholders believe that the only AAA single-player game that sells is Naughty Dog-style third-person cover shooters with highly scripted platforming. Why hire IO Interactive and keep their signature player freedom to small doses once per level?
This is MI6. We're taking control of this mission effective immediately.
How does MI6 set up a secret research base on Iceland, preset it for thermochemical sterilization, allow it to be taken over by a gang of thieves, lose dozens of Marines trying to recapture it, and not have this turn into an international incident? Putting dry clothes directly over your cold and soaking uniform negates the purpose.
I found one of their guns.
What kind?
It's a TXK Biome. Serial's gone.
Discontinued. Also, it's biometrically locked.
Whenever a stealth action game wants to limit your access to guns, they place biometric locks on them, a feature you won't encounter for the rest of the game after this since you're encouraged to switch weapons often by taking them from downed enemies. Unlike Agent 47, James only gets to disguise himself when the game calls for it.
Know exactly who we're up against. A Balkan gang of thieves known as Arrowhead.
How far has the British government fallen that this is the kind of problem they have to deal with in the Atlantic? Balkan thieves shooting down their SAS choppers and stealing their advanced technology.
You need an antidote. You've been exposed to a nerve agent.
Which one?
What?
There's 2 of them.
The orange one. Do not use the other one.
James has been exposed to a nerve agent. For some reason, they keep 2 different types of injections in the same box. Neither of them labeled, and you're only supposed to use one. But since neurotoxin turns on the piss filter, James can't tell which is which, so injects both, somehow surviving.
Listen carefully. You have less than 1% chance of success. Now stand down.
Come on now, it's a tutorial mission. The odds aren't that low.
Then run east on my signal.
What kind of signal?
You'll know when you see it.
That 1% chance is starting to seem reasonable if James's plan is to have 2 separate groups of hostages simply run away from the base full of armed men on a signal. That first kill is all the ludonarrative dissidence acknowledgement James gets, because Bond famously has a license to kill, which gets you over the PTSD quicker. An ATV can serve as armor-piercing rounds in a pinch. Why exactly did they all flee towards a cliff anyway?
Stop! I've got the detonator! Hold your fire! What is this now? You want to blow us up?
It's not a dead man switch. Shoot Bond in the head and he isn't detonating anything. Bond and the hostages all survive this explosion, but somehow the thieves don't. Cue the intro sequence that I can't play any of due to copyright protection. But it is something I can play on my Patreon, where you can get uncensored GameSins videos like this one and exclusive ones you can't get anywhere else, like my recent Dino Crisis sim video. You can find a link to my Patreon down below. Become a member today and tell me how wrong I am over there. I'll actually listen.
Air crewmen in training accidentally stumbling upon an MI6 operation of the utmost importance. Initially willing to assist, but then you hang up on us. Go against direct orders, and ultimately blow up the invaluable asset we were there to retrieve.
M makes an excellent case for not hiring James for clandestine spy work. In fact, she makes a case for James never being allowed into His Majesty's Royal Air Force to begin with. Recruitment must be down.
I want you to join my training program. Though, I have to warn you, it's unlikely you'll pass the tests. Should you make it, I have to inform you that agents have a very short life expectancy.
That strikes me as a failure of your training program, which trains agents to be action movie stars rather than effective spies. The CIA has only lost 141 agents since its inception.
Normal social life is near impossible.
Your social life, maybe. But your sex life? That goes way up.
John Greenway.
Yes. And you're late.
James just stepped off the plane and onto the runway. If he's late, blame the pilot.
Meet our new star air crewman Bond. So capable he could skip basic training. He'll now demonstrate his superior close combat skills.
Any spy trainer that tells his recruits to form grudges and maintain trainee hierarchy against his least favorite student is doing a pretty poor job of it, especially when James hasn't done anything to offend Greenway.
I don't know who the hell is playing favors for you. Obviously someone up high, but you won't get any from me. Better candidates were cut, and as far as I'm concerned, you should only be here if you've earned it.
Your best friend among the other recruits, Cressida, is an actual Nepo baby. She's capable, sure, but her father is in the Prime Minister's cabinet. These recruits are far more likely to drive a Toyota Hilux in an expensive sports car during ops. And the training feels more like driver's ed than special agent training. I have expected James to be asked to parallel park. Monroe lures James into a fight to test him that goes on forever and traverses the entire training course. Through 2 plate glass windows, a cafeteria table, into the target area of a gun range, and onto a building scaffolding. This test would have resulted in injuries that would have sent both of them to the hospital for months. Did James have to fly all the way from Malta to London for this performance review in office with him? They could have had a secure call.
Greenway recommends that I cut you from the program.
Not exactly a surprise. It's been a pleasure, Mom.
I want to show you something.
Despite my instructor telling me you're a terrible fit for spy work, and even pointing out that people fall for your charm in spite of the danger you place them in, I'm going to keep you on and even show you the most closely held secret in British intelligence.
I've been heading MI6 for 14 months now. Tell me, how many terror attacks have we had on British soil in that period?
As far as I know, none.
Dead agents, blown covers?
I wouldn't know, Mom.
Also none. How about the number of prevented or secretly resolved conflicts? Countless.
Just a few months ago, MI6 was taken by complete surprise when their research base in Iceland was attacked by thieves and several MI6 researchers were killed. Your fancy quantum computer got a full squad of SAS Marines liquidated. They finally found the location of the James Bond intro shot.
That was Thea, in Iceland, in case you were wondering, guiding you every step of the way.
And yet it was wrong.
Thea gave you a less than 1% chance of success. You simply beat the odds. You see, I strongly believe that there is still a need for such human flourishes as heart and intuition in modern spycraft. In fact, that's the very reason I'm bringing back the double O's.
Have you ever considered that it was a fluke that James survived that ordeal and that he's not some kind of luck wizard? Q equips Bond with a watch that can hack electronics and turn them on or off. It's only limited by a small battery, which forces James to grab any spares he can find lying around instead of bringing a battery pack with him on missions.
Thank God, I'm starving. Hi, there's a decent Indian just around the corner. There's just enough time before we head back to Malta.
You three just moved into this swanky safe house today, and you only have enough time to eat out tonight before you head back to Malta for more training. Why do you even need this place in London if you're spending most of your time training in Malta?
Your business.
But you would agree that being orphaned at a young age has left you rudderless and unable to finish anything meaningful.
No.
Are you offended? You think I've overstepped? You do realize that the people who put you in that chair in real life, they won't play fair.
They also won't bother with a lie detector and will just peel your fingernails off. The next Q gadget is a phone that shoots darts. You can load these with any chemicals you find and get the same non-fatal effect on guards. I had no idea that shooting someone full of oven cleaner would do nothing but make them nauseous. When caught sneaking, Bond can charm and bluff his way out of situations. It's limited by the amount of people you've silently taken down in a level. So Bond's charisma is somehow tied to his capacity for violence, and he occasionally runs out of wit if he doesn't feed it another person's blood.
We go get the flag now. Have a well-deserved rest tomorrow.
Rather than wait until tomorrow for the next Capture the Flag training run, they decide to steal it tonight from the SAS so they can have a day off. How is Greenway not going to know that you already stole the flag tonight when the SAS caught you breaking into the training grounds and failed to stop you from escaping in a boat? It's not an IO interactive game if there isn't a nightclub level.
The epiphylium occipitalum only blossoms at night.
Not even a botanist is getting wet to that one. But yet, it works. And this lady follows James through the club while ignoring her boyfriend, all because he mistook her for his contact.
What have you got for me?
There's a package for you in the gents. Watch it in private.
Any unlocked Dropbox in a men's restroom inside a nightclub is going to be filled with trash, drugs, and bodily waste. James would be better off refilling his Dart phone from what he'd find inside than retrieving mission-critical intelligence.
Bottle service.
What?
Right, guys, that's Pike taken care of. Locked him in.
You know Pike has a phone on him that he can call his contact and tell them that he's been locked up in the club and then MI6 is onto them, right? Training is suspended due to a sensitive matter. A former 009 agent, Reese Beckett, guilty of high treason, claims to have evidence of a conspiracy against the state and will turn it over only to Greenway for a full pardon. He chose an international chess tournament being held at the Grand Carpathian for the meeting. Given what 009 knows about MI6 and how it's compromised, he has to know that those behind the compromising will be aware of this and try to stop it. Choosing a hotel full of innocent people is reckless when he could just share the information in a secure transmission.
Greenway wasn't happy with your performance last night, and he's reluctant to bring you along, just a heads up.
Right. Any advice?
Doing what you're told might be a good start.
Not doing as he was told was the whole reason you recruited James. James is assigned the role of a chauffeur for the mission instead of something more dramatic like the rest of the recruits since Greenway still doesn't like him. Despite that, he still has to report to Q Gadget training to field test a shockwave camera and smoke grenade that he won't need for his limited role in the mission.
You were authorized to bring 2 items into the field.
James has a license to kill, but not check out more than 2 gadgets from Q Labs. Moneypenny has her own taxpayer-funded goon pod.
Thea consumes data on an unprecedented scale, but if you leave none, you're effectively invisible. Imagine the focus and dedication it takes to stay off-grid for so long.
I would imagine a spy doesn't prioritize updating his Facebook account very often, so most spies would be able to stay off Thea's radar just by operating normally. James takes his position in the car park until he spots a bellhop throwing a piece of luggage over the railing and decides to disobey orders and follow him, which proves difficult because he keeps changing disguise. This mission ends up feeling like Agent 007 following Agent 47 as he changes outfits stolen from people he's taken out.
That's right, the maid is picking a lock. Now you've seen everything.
Did you just assume the person coming in through the door would be someone who wouldn't report you for picking locks? You've never met James before, and there's no way you can know he's a spy like you since this is his first mission. James follows the blonde man into the dining room where he vanishes, but then James comes across a secret passage in the fireplace, which the blonde guy just happened to know about despite never being here before either. I guess that blonde guy beat Monroe to death, because that's what he tries to do to James despite getting the drop on him. The blonde twins could have pulled out those knives a bit earlier before James grabbed a sword. James disarms the bomb, but there was another one that goes off right behind him. He survives that explosion just fine, even though it kills or cripples the rest of the 00 recruits who were much further away on a different floor of the hotel. 009 takes off after the explosion and Greenway orders James to go after him. The maid jumps in the car with James and he's fine with it. As far as he knows, she's involved with the people who just blew up the building. She was acting just as suspicious as the blonde guys. Just because she's hot doesn't mean she's on your side. The woman claims to be Charlotte Roth with French intelligence. She's after 009 as well. That's not who she really is. And later on, it makes no sense why she was even here looking for 009 since she doesn't need him for anything. They should have come with an old-fashioned live leak watermark. As a plane takes off with 009, it pushes this luggage loading machine into James at high speed, and he just glues himself onto it and onto the plane instead of being smeared all over the landing strip. These mercs didn't have to suicidally get on top of the plane to punch James. They could have left him out there and he would have been scraped off the plane by wind forces. James hacks the flight control system to shift the plane left and right, causing the cargo to crush enemies whenever you want. It's the best use of the hacking mechanic in the game, but there is no way the plane wouldn't crash after all this. The back half of the plane rips open and all the cargo spills out, but somehow 009 still manages to fly it to Africa. Skydiving without a chute is nothing James hasn't done before, but it's even more unlikely he'd survive it this time since this is before he became a seasoned Red Bull agent.
Sorry to intrude.
I'm Sir Nicholas Webb, AI pioneer, national security advisor, and CEO of Webb Industries.
I wonder if this Sir Nicholas Webb will turn out to be the villain in such charged technocratic times. The name Webb couldn't be pointing to something nefarious either, could it?
I'm sending you to Mauritania to bring him back any way you see fit.
I have a few ideas.
Need I state the obvious? He is not ready. I am perfectly capable of handling this.
James survived falling out of an airplane without a parachute and left a tracking device on 009's plane after tailing assassins you were unaware of through the Carpathian. If he's not ready, then no one is.
Greenway will take point. Bond, you will do as you're told.
Again, you hired James because he didn't do what he was told. It's the one and only unique feature that he has that you wanted. Lenny Kravitz is the man you call when you need to depict the bisexual side of a society of lawless killers. To reach Ali and find out where Bonma is hiding 009, they need to get into the weapons auction, which costs $100,000, and James has to come up with the money on his own and left by stealing it, fighting in a tournament, and weirdly winning a stall shooting gallery that can net you $30,000. The auction isn't a normal one where you bid money. You bid in political favors, information, trade deals, and black market access, all upheld by a lie detector test. This would never work because it was established earlier that you can fool a lie detector, and any auction would know that.
Safe passage to, from, and through all of our harbors. No inspections, no questions. Complete and utter diplomatic cover. Plus, private jet with armed escort for Bavma.
For the rest of his life.
These people are offering all of that for a single Serbian drone. Drones are only useful in numbers. No single drone is that valuable.
You can stay with Bavma, but you'll go down with him and you'll watch as we turn this whole place to dust. Or you could take the throne, and our superiors will continue to turn a blind eye to all that goes on here.
Ali didn't even make them use a lie detector to make sure they were telling the truth with their offer to make him the new leader of Aleph once Bonma falls for hiding 009 here for years. You have them right there. How did the people who got in here and killed 009 do so without setting off or disabling any of his booby traps? There's plenty of evidence to prove that 009 was behind the bombing of the Grand Carpathian, like the hotel blueprints and half-completed bomb, but all of this is planted evidence to convince them that 009 was behind it. On the floor sits an old photo of Greenway and 009, with the words, "Remember this." Flip it over and there's a stamp, a ship name, Trans World Consortium. 009 knew Greenway would be the only one who would recognize the importance of this. There was just one small issue. 009 had no way of knowing Greenway would ever set foot in this room. He didn't even know if Greenway was still alive after the bombing. He spent years hiding successfully from Thea, invisible enough that the only reason anyone eventually found him was James's watch on his plane, a detail 009 was completely unaware of on account of not being in the writer's room. So here's his plan laid out in full. Vanish off the grid for years, tell no one, trust no one, and, on the off chance your former partner happens to wander into this specific room after you've died, leave him a cute little photo with a cute little caption, just in case. Low effort contingency planning for a scenario 009 had zero reason to expect and even less reason to bet his one shred of evidence on. Bonma's men grab them as they leave, then suspend them over a pit of crocodiles with Ali, who was eaten alive. As they're slowly lowered into the same fate, Greenway gets them out by mentioning that MI6 knows where Bonma's sister Harmony is, which must be something they're planning for the DLC because that point never comes up again. Watching two video game characters work together to open a stuck door has to be the most overly complicated process in any game.
009. Looks like he wasn't the culprit. He was the target.
Inside a self-destructing briefcase, Greenway finds the evidence that 009 wanted him to find, and whatever he quickly scans inside is enough to prove that 009 was the target back at the Carpathian, not the culprit. Somehow this mysterious evidence that proves 009 is innocent doesn't provide any clues to who the true culprit is, and we never get to see what that evidence was, because the mercs who killed 009 followed them here, and once they grab the briefcase it explodes.
Brace yourself!
They had to cut to black there because the odds of both of them surviving that explosion and being thrown from the vehicle are so low that there was no way to animate it without it being embarrassing. Bonma comes to the rescue and then disappears for the rest of the game to wait for his DLC. With the evidence gone, vaporized inside the briefcase along with an entire chapter of narrative momentum, the official story reverts to 009 destroyed the Carpathian. James, who disproved that 20 minutes ago, gets sent home anyway. At home, he finds a note, a suicide note, which you would think would make them want to make James's death look like a suicide as to not draw attention to an MI6 agent being murdered. These people are supposed to be good at tricking MI6 after all, and they are, up until the point where they have to kill James, at which point all that advanced planning fell apart into a bear hug from behind. And this assassin was working with someone who was getting a drink in the kitchen, seemingly expecting his partner to fail, and this guy in turn was just to get James in front of a window where a sniper was supposed to shoot him, a window which James walked past repeatedly before any of this started. The blonde guy had the shot, he had several shots, and chose to save it all for when James would be clued into him by the guy yelling, "Take the shot." Snipers don't use laser sights. It's pointless at range since they're using a scope and would only give away their position. James loses the twin, but asks Moneypenny to trace the text on the other attacker's phone to the Web Industries anniversary gala, where the blonde guy bends the phone to keep James from tracking him. Would have been a smart idea to bend that on the street before leading James to the gala and cluing him into his employer.
Bollocks, I don't have the password.
People are lazy. They probably put it on a post-it note. Have a look around.
I'd rather not even need a password if they're going to make finding the password as simple as looking around for a post-it note. The camera footage leads Bond to the basement where Murto has set a trap for James, so he should have just kept the phone on him if he wanted to lead James down here. He forced James to hack CCTV footage to find him.
Damien,
I hope I'm not interrupting anything.
You're not. Damien, meet Mr. Beach, was it?
Bond. James Bond.
What do you do, James?
Lately, headhunting.
Oh dear.
Murto's earpiece reveals they were working for Webb, so James heads back upstairs to the gala where he runs into the mystery lady from the Grand Carpathian who works for Webb and is entertaining Webb's son, who I shit you not is named Damien. You name your kid Damien, you're not hoping they land a STEM career. There is no version of that name that doesn't split 50-50 between future hedge fund manager and literal antichrist. And somehow Webb picked this name for his son and Thea for his AI quantum computer, and somehow was surprised when both turned out to be failures that cause him problems. I'll grant you that Damien spotting James at the party and deciding on sight to drug him is reasonable villain behavior. What I can't grant is that he walked up carrying 2 spiked drinks, because that means somewhere between noticing James and prepare poison. Damien also clocked that the woman standing near James and works closely with his own father as also secretly a spy. He was competent enough to pre-drug a drink for her specifically with zero setup. There is nothing that blew her cover.
Someone trained her well.
How did you allow her to get this close? And what is he doing here? You know I handle MI6.
They were onto us, and I didn't think that we had time for your back-channeling.
Let's tally Damien's body of work so far. He blew up a luxury hotel and killed several MI6 agents and pinned all of it on a rogue agent. He identified 2 undercover intelligence operatives at a party using nothing but vibes, and quietly for years he's personally cleaned up every catastrophe his father's malfunctioning AI has caused, doctoring the evidence well enough that MI6 built its entire threat assessment pipeline around trusting the exact machine that keeps generating the threats. That's not a henchman, that's a top performer. Years of flawless, borderline superhuman crisis management, undone in Dad's eyes by one mistake. The goal here is to keep Damien beating James while his watch hacks Damien's phone, but not be beaten enough to die. I guess we're lucky that Damien chose the least efficient way possible to finish off Bond by punching him. This is the same guy who is so good at what he does that MI6 has no clue he's been fooling them for years, but now he lets sadism get the better of him instead of just shooting James in the head. James had no plan for what to do after he finished hacking Damien's phone, and then was about to be killed by his men. But the mystery lady, named Isola, since the game has been coy about her name for 2 chapters now, somehow concealed a knife in her sleeve despite wearing a sleeveless dress and cuts her way free and kills the guards.
3 months. That's how long I spent infiltrating Webb Industries. And you managed to waste it in all of 30 seconds.
Why did Isola disguise herself as a maid and infiltrate the Grand Carpathian under full risk of exposure to track down 009 when she was already working inside Webb Industries the entire time? The honest answer is that Isola isn't infiltrating anything, she's teleporting, wherever the plot currently needs a femme fatale Bond girl, usually to hand James a clue or rescue him from danger. You don't even have to steer the garbage truck during the escape, it steers itself down a straight path. The soundtrack does most of the heavy lifting to make it seem impressive. All they need to do now is gain access to the server room where the company keeps its secure information. This is the longest level in the game and also the most boring, since it's primarily Bond and Greenway bonding, solving robotic vacuum cleaner puzzles, and office platforming. Isola is also here. She also has zero reason to be here, and leaves without ever stating what she was even here for. To reach the server room, they first need a code from Webb's penthouse, which he keeps in a safe. Since he's prone to forgetting passwords, he created a memory aid which points to the artwork in his penthouse. No one in this game seems to be able to remember a 4-digit PIN.
Look for an 8-letter word or number sequence.
Got it. The command code is Basilisk.
Can Webb name anything normally? His son is Damien, his computer is Thea, and now Basilisk.
Karachi, 2021. The drone strike on Sarazin, the arms dealer.
I thought that was the CIA.
So does the CIA. Bond. These are all MI6 Black Ops based on confirmed Thea data. Some of our biggest intelligence successes in the last decade, but if I'm reading this right, we were working off of false intel every single time.
Thea makes mistakes.
Thea makes mistakes.
Quantum computers, as they currently exist, are so error-prone that they're barely past the impressive demo stage of their development. And pair that with an AI, a technology whose signature move is confidently inventing facts that were never true. An MI6 installed one and trusted its output without ever field testing it, which led to missions on faulty information including Operation Nightfall, where Greenway killed 2 supposedly rogue 00 agents and tried to kill 009, who escaped and then attempted to warn MI6 about the threat of Thea. These mistakes forced Webb to send his son on missions to correct the narrative. But how would Webb even know when Thea was wrong if MI6 didn't? And how did he even get started sending his son on missions? Nothing about Damien reads like a man who went through selection, training, and years of fieldcraft. Every available description is unstable before it's ever competent.
Of course, Thea is the future. Except Nightfall wasn't a single isolated incident. Thea made mistakes again and again, and you let it continue. You failed. Your miracle machine is broken.
Thea is the smartest mind on the planet. It will attain perfection, and when it does, the lies will no longer matter.
In the years since Thea went online and started making these grave errors, did it ever occur to you to fix the damn machine? The fact that MI6 is using a years-old quantum computer that hasn't been upgraded or replaced is already concerning. This is the sort of technology where advancements happen every few months. Just how long have you had the poison gas emitters inside your server control room? That's an insane level of foresight. Or you really hate the IT department. Greenway has a rocket-launching pin that he uses to blow open the door to escape, then tosses it to James. This pin is reloaded by adding the same chemicals found in the environment they used to make nausea darts. Who knew adding Windex and shoe polish could create such an explosive mix? It would make more sense if it shot the lithium batteries James finds all over the place. Those can actually explode and do damage.
You're making coffee.
Could do with a cup. No.
There have to be people at MI6 who accidentally activated the secret door when getting a cup of coffee if it's that simple.
As we speak, there are arrest orders with your names on them working their way through the system, and my future's not looking much brighter.
Well, we just have to show them what we found.
Oh, God, don't be so naive. It's one thing you broke into Web HQ. It's another that you got caught, but leaving without proof? You couldn't have botched this any worse had you tried.
Did neither of you bother to save any of the data you gathered about Webb and his defective quantum computer? You had all of it, and instead you allowed Webb to make the narrative about you breaking into his building. You're supposed to be spies who were trained at this.
In case you're wondering, it is footage of you and Greenway assaulting Web HQ, two of my agents rogue on British soil.
Well, that doesn't change the fact
It changes everything. He is accusing you of terrorism.
That's nothing. Wait until you see what James posted on his Facebook account. That's the real crime over in England, I hear. How exactly are those robotic arms spot-wielding that car behind Q when it's covered by a sheet? The sewer entrance to MI6 is covered by a massive intake fan. Would you really want sewer air being blown directly into your research lab? James is sent to Vietnam to catch Damien in the act of changing events to match Thea's prediction. The computer recently flagged the recent deaths of two scientific researchers to the acts of a Unabomber-style terrorist named Caliban. Only that terrorist was found dead in Mexico months ago. So Damien plans to kill a prominent researcher vacationing in Vietnam's high-end resort to make it look like Caliban is still alive and carrying out his regular assassinations. Seeing Damien's cleanup operation firsthand makes me wonder just how they were able to keep MI6 from discovering the truth for years. Pulling off a copycat murder with an entire army would leave noticeable evidence. Not to mention, Webb has to know that James and Greenway have told him everything they know about Thea, and even if they don't have proof of their claims, it would still be investigated.
And the glasses?
Q glasses. They see everything, recording it back here at MI6.
So you see what I see.
This is the kind of Q-tech that would only be impressive in the old James Bond movies. Facebook makes glasses that do the same thing.
John?
Drinking alone was never my forte.
Well, I didn't realize you were this thirsty.
Do you not care that a stranger just broke into your villa? Or is that a turn-on for you? It would be nice if the bow tie quick time event mattered after this, considering how much time was spent on it.
He doesn't fit the narrative. The real Caliban never allowed for collateral damage.
Nobody's perfect.
How many times? My father is adamant that the validity of Thea's conclusion is not questioned.
Let me spell out in the most incriminating way possible for me and my father exactly what it is we do that is so bad. For a man whose job is correcting the narrative by killing people, Damien shows no level of efficiency when it comes to killing James, bringing him to a marble quarry miles away from the resort so he can cut him in half with a saw. James has hardly wronged you so badly that you would go to this amount of trouble to give him a suspenseful and gruesome death. Damien is wearing what feels like a Call of Duty skinny bot. After killing everyone around James and shutting down the saw with a sniper rifle, Greenway now needs James to call targets for him.
I'm in a bit of a bind here.
What's the problem?
Taking fire from all angles. They've got me pinned down.
I can see why they managed to pin Greenway down. He took up a sniping position in front of a floodlight that plastered his shadow all over the wall behind him.
Come on. Not good. Not good at all.
Here, take this. You hold them off while I try and get this thing moving.
Greenway is suddenly an expert in massive earth mover truck repair, being able to get it moving again by fiddling around with the controls in the cabin. Greenway gets taken out by a random mook who runs up after they flatten hundreds of soldiers with the truck. You had the drop on James again and you chose to run up and kidney punch him rather than shoot or stab him. Damien injects himself with super soldier drugs, so James's only choice is to run around blinding Damien with floodlights. The thing is, Damien took James's watch which let him hack electronics, so James has to do it manually, and the light should have stunned James just as much since he's standing in front of it. Damien survives this. He's back on his feet in no time even.
You've got heart, Bond. It's just what we need right now. I don't know why I didn't see it before.
Because you're a stereotype hard-ass teacher who hates the cocky student with talent but learns to respect him by the time of your death when you sacrifice yourself for him. MI6 had those office supplies preset for him to stand on the desk to make an announcement.
5 minutes ago, Sir Nicholas Webb informed us that if we ignore his demands, the next leak will be bigger and a lot closer to present day. Meaning that sources, assets, and even agents will be at risk. It has been decided to accept Webb's demands and grant him immunity.
Hold up 1 second. Webb deleted all the compromising data from his servers and even destroyed the servers. How can he blackmail MI6 with it?
What are you doing? We can't let Webb get away with this.
What we do is my call. The world's not fair, Bond. I thought Greenway taught you that.
Why did you recruit Bond specifically because he disobeyed orders and made the impossible happen, then get upset when he keeps wanting to go against your decisions? Since the government is going to give in and grant Webb immunity for his crimes in exchange for not releasing all of MI6's intelligence, James decides to go rogue and take down Webb, and starts by raiding Q Labs for field equipment, but it's locked down, so first he needs to get a copy of Q's fingerprint, which he somehow does in a scavenger hunt, tracking down partial fingerprints scattered around the room Q happened to work in. One print off a glass, one off a motorcycle, one off some equipment against the wall. This man is reconstructing forensic biometric data by eyeballing partial smudges and going, yep, that's the same finger. No actual forensic tools or process. Just vibes, scotch tape, and confidence. It's pretty unsafe that the controls to start an explosion are located inside the explosion chamber along with a storage container full of propane tanks.
You know where he is? I have the means to get us there.
And I don't.
Nice try, James. But we both know you're about to burn all bridges. Besides, I already know he's somewhere in the Antarctic Circle, so unless you plan to join a whaling crew, I'm your best shot.
Isola calls James, which is fortunate for him because James just finished raiding Q Labs and didn't know where to find Webb or have a plan on how he was going to go after Webb in the Arctic Circle.
What's this?
Vodka martini. Shaken, not stirred.
What's the difference?
The difference is one means you suck in making martinis. I get that Webb is a Bond villain, but he also runs a tech business. What was the reason for building his R&D facility on a remote island in the Arctic Circle? It's not a good place for attracting talent, it's near nothing useful for him, and it would have cost a fortune. None of that reads like a business decision. It's just a weird desire of a man who watched too many Bond movies, saw the volcano layer and thought, yes, but colder and functional as a workplace. These are the outfits you wear for a chilly winter day, not traipsing around in the Arctic.
What exactly are we breaking into?
Webb Industries' fabled R&D facility. All the greatest breakthroughs were developed right here. That includes the big brain in your basement. I knew about it, just not its exact location.
Isola didn't know where this Arctic research base was located until recently. However, I would argue that building a large skyscraper in the middle of a glacier in the Arctic Circle would be hard to keep secret. It would show up in satellite photos, and shipping manifests for construction and supply would also give it away.
She brings a submarine, thermal smartware, jamming device. Does she bring a rope?
James is doing a damn good job of sending this game for me.
I need you to promise you won't make any moves before I do what I came here to do.
For England, James?
No games, Isola. Do we have a deal?
Just don't fail. One way or another, Webb dies today.
What does it matter? You came here to disable the quantum computer. She's here to kill Webb. Do it in whichever order you want. I'm still trying to figure out how disabling the quantum computer will delete all the MI6 intel Webb has already downloaded and copied. You're telling me that Webb's company has already produced AI-powered worker robots, and his focus was on his faulty quantum computer? These robots alone would revolutionize the world. Webb Industries made a wrecking ball robot that can't run over anything with a heartbeat. Coming from a developer who once made a level where you can crush people in a wine press, this one had to sting.
It's a roadmap.
Yeah, for overthrowing the British government in as few moves as possible.
You don't need a quantum computer and a master plan to overthrow the British government these days. Just post about immigrants on social media and the reins are yours.
How is this possible?
Well, looks like with Thea offline, Webb was finally free to use his mirror machine to his own gain.
Why would Webb trust his quantum computer to overthrow the British government when he knows it's wrong about most things?
James Bond. We meet again.
You snuck up on them reading the computer files, but didn't notice Isola there and let her sneak up on you? While on the freight elevator on his way down to the quantum computer, soldiers toss a flash grenade and stun James, but then engage with fists rather than shoot him with the guns they're carrying. Webb sends killer robots after James, which can also only punch him to death. To be fair, they are bulletproof and quite strong, but that's still all anyone ever tries to do to James.
Mr. Bond. Predictably unpredictable.
If James is so predictable, why wasn't your plan better than hiding behind the quantum computer with a gun and a smartwatch that will dump all of MI6's intel if your life signs cease? He could easily shoot the gun out of your hand. That's a mechanic in this game. Or blind you with a laser on his watch. Or any of the many other things he could do to you that would involve killing you and then destroy the quantum computer.
There is no flip side to the world I'm building. You think I'm a fiend?
You can just shoot James. You're not even trying to convince him to see things your way. You're just monologuing like all stereotypical Bond villains. Isola comes in and shoots Webb, forcing James to keep him alive with chest compressions while she steals the core of the quantum computer. Her story about her parents was a lie. She works for a mysterious organization that they never named, but I'm sure you can take a stab at. Why do games insist on being so cringe with self-referentialism when they get their hands on a big license? Does James have to jump through the famous closing iris from the intro? Why exactly is this place falling apart? No one activated a self-destruct. James chases after Isola in a boat that has a cannon that can only target large chunks of ice and not her boat. With the core destroyed, the sub leaves Isola behind, and the British military somehow respond to something going on in the Arctic Circle that James only informed them about a few minutes ago. The first time James disobeyed you, you gave him a job. Now he just saved your ass and you lock him up? MI6 comes under attack and the cells open up, which is a strange security protocol. It even provides an escape route right next to the cells, which Isola takes. Q built an escape couch into his own lab. I guess he predicted it would one day be invaded through the stupid sewer tunnel entrance he left open.
They've activated Thea's magnetic shielding, meaning you'll have to enter the core unarmed.
Thea has magnetic shielding that stops you from bringing guns into it somehow. Weird how Webb's other quantum computer, which was linked with Thea, didn't have the same issue, because Webb and Isola brought guns into that identical chamber. Even weirder that this magnetic field doesn't prevent you from bringing weaponized gadgets like laser watches and rocket pins into it. Somehow Damien became a cyborg after being crushed in Vietnam. His father believed he was killed, and only his company seemed to have the advanced technology to perform this kind of procedure. So who did all this to Damien?
My legacy, my inheritance, all gone. All except for good old Thea here, eh?
After having lost everything, he's here to steal Thea's core and sell it to the highest bidder. I'm not sure who would want to bid on a faulty quantum computer that gets things wrong, but he sees a market for it. Thank God they made it so you couldn't bring guns into this room. Someone might have been harmed. Part of me suspects this might be subtle English political commentary. We never see Moneypenny again after this or even find out if she survived. Just how is Damien planning on getting out of England after launching an attack on MI6 and taking their quantum computer core? He's a cyborg. He's going to stand out at the airport. It would have been easier to fit machine guns, a flamethrower, and a missile pod in an SUV rather than a supercar like this. Why would you bring a weapon like that to a raid on an underground location? That's for anti-tank or even anti-ship. Since apparently this car can survive anything short of an ICBM, Damien traps it under rubble, so James frees himself by using the ejector seat. Why would it even come with an ejector seat? An ejector seat is a suicide button in a car. All of these explosions and bullets should destroy the exposed quantum core on Damien's back. James destroyed the one in the Arctic with a single bullet after all. Damien punches the ground and they fall a good 20 feet to a new level containing a reservoir. And apparently this is where Damien planned to end up, since he had auto turrets and bombs set up that will flood MI6 and kill everyone there.
Flooding the tunnels. You're gonna kill everyone. Bang on! There's enough water in this reservoir to turn MI6 underground into a fish tank.
I hate to break it to him that water is not going to flow through the air and through a hole in the ceiling, so none of it's going to reach MI6. You have to hack Damien's turrets to damage him. After the first one, you think you would be wise to James's plan and destroy the other one before he could turn it against him.
Stay down! All I've got to do is walk out the door, and I'm home free.
What door? You blew the bridge you were both standing on and were walking toward the ledge into the water. James should have let Damien keep walking instead of tackling him. It took auto turrets firing explosive shells that damaged Damien earlier. Now James can knee and elbow him effectively. Just a moment ago, Damien wouldn't blow the reservoir because he didn't have it in him to kill himself to kill James. Well, now he's willing to drown by dragging James down with him instead of swimming to the surface. Isola somehow knew MI6 like the back of her hand despite never having been here before. After she escaped from the cell, she made her way down to the sewers in time to steal the Thea core, and then dived back in to save James, who doesn't really need the help. He nearly drowned at the start of the game after all, and didn't need any help saving himself.
Perhaps you'd be so kind as to do some digging. 007.
This is an Amazon-owned game. Do you really want to risk sequel baiting? Thanks for watching. I'm sorry videos have been late recently. It's been a busy year for me. What with getting married, a honeymoon, buying a house, and then getting moved into that house. But that's all wrapped up now and I'll be focusing on content heavily for the rest of the year. So consider subscribing to the channel if you like it, and also becoming a member of my Patreon and get videos even earlier, as well as exclusive videos you can't watch anywhere else, like Dino Crisis and the upcoming Mystery of the Druid Sin video. Special thanks to patrons Squirrel, Victoria, Vanilla Pixel, Chris, Solomon McGuire, Roman Are You Sleeping, Xavier Distalis, Notorious SKP, Max Headroom, Asinith the Succubus, Musical Pumpkin, Castlemania, Zinro, Dennis O'Brien, Malrose, Donald Talbot, Montezuma, Sky is Under, PK Reed, Celestial Star, Eric Kisser, A Waste of Resources, Erpel Jaeger, Church Kiones, S. Venus, Mario Neto, Biohazard, and Charmsy.